Hope everyone's having a good weekend. We're going to be doing a stream tonight, so be sure to check that. But before we jump into it, let's talk about the topic of today, which is now that Siege is done and everyone pretty much has watched it, we're going to jump into where we're going now for the next part of Siege. What is going to be the story of EarthRise and how it's going to affect the ongoing story of this trilogy. Now, Hasbro Pulse had one of their members, Olivia, interview FJ DeSanto, who's one of the executive producers of the Netflix Transformer series. And he kind of gave little bits of hints and where everything is going to be going, essentially, with this EarthRise series. Now, keep in mind, again, it's going to be another 6 episodes. So we don't know how condensed this kind of information will be spread across those 6 episodes, or it could be something that's just a small little piece of it. But he did mention a few things, and we'll just go over some of those bullet points. So one of the big key things about EarthRise is going to be about the Autobots going into space and what is out there in the galaxy, friends or foes, which is, again, that's interesting because at least it'll kind of keep them off of an Earth environment and probably the limitations of that, of those kind of designs and everything, and not having human characters, which is always a go. So that'll be pretty interesting. I almost feel like just by looking at the EarthRise toys, it's very easily an excuse to bring in Quintessons and play up that kind of Cybertronian origin, explain what was that civil war that Alpha Trion fought with Megatron and Ultra Magnus and everything, and Optimus. You know, they only seeded that a little bit in the first part of the trilogy, so I really feel it's going to probably go in that direction. They also mentioned how we're going to see the ramifications of now that Cybertron doesn't have the Allspark anymore. And this kind of plays into, I mean, it started with the movieverse. You know, we shoot the Allspark away from Cybertron, and Cybertron starts to decay, and that was in the Bay movieverse. And then when we had animated, it was like, you know, Optimus shoots the Allspark into a space bridge, and Cybertron doesn't decay, but, you know, it actually kind of still does well, but same thing, getting rid of the Allspark. And then even in Cyberverse, it was the same thing. Throws, you know, the Allspark into a space bridge, and then Cybertron starts to lose its energy and power as time progresses. There's that decay, that atrophy that exists. So it kind of is playing off of the past 3 major series outside of Transformer Prime, let's say, that use that kind of MacGuffin and storytelling plot elements. So it's kind of the same thing going on here, where you have Optimus who threw the Allspark into the space bridge. It's not on Cybertron anymore, and now Cybertron is decaying and dying. And so they want to cover in the EarthRise sequel series here, Chapter 2, how that affects the planet, how that affects the people that came from that planet, the Cybertronians, the Autobots, and the Decepticons, and even more so how that affects people that are off-planet, people that were not on Cybertron all this time, and how it affects them now that Cybertron doesn't have the Allspark and their core, their home, is decaying, and what's going on across the galaxy now that this centerpiece of the galaxy, Cybertron, is in a state of, you know, like I said, atrophy, you know, breakdown, rusting, if you will. Very, very similar to what the movieverse was kind of playing up for a while. He also mentions that, you know, we had the mercenary faction that was shown here with Sound Blaster and stuff, and he wants to, you know, have more of that appear, and it will appear in some kind of fashion in EarthRise. Again, the mercenaries, because they're probably something off-world. That doesn't surprise me. That's something that could be easily done. Again, looking to what is going on with the toys right now, does that mean we're going to finally have the first ever fictional appearance of Exhaust, who was shown to be a mercenary character from the Hasbro Pulse toy website? That would be interesting. It also begs the question, because if the Netflix toy line is any indication of what is used in the show, then does that mean that we're going to get a EarthRise Netflix toy line, Walmart exclusive, that'll have a repaint of Quintesson, that'll have a repaint of Exhaust, that'll have a repaint of certain characters? That is another big question mark that I have right there, if anything. So it'll be very interesting to see where that goes, especially. But that was another thing that he mentioned. He just really wants to make sure Mercenaries are a big part of it, because he actually kind of enjoyed them, and the Sound Blaster character, adding him to it especially, was a part of it, and to continue that kind of thing for the ongoing story. But otherwise, it's really is, Optimus's journey and them going into space and dealing with it. So I think that from what it sounds like, EarthRise is going to be like Siege was the war on Cybertron. EarthRise is going to be like the travel to Earth, and Kingdom is going to be crashing on prehistoric Earth. And instead of having the traditional, crash on Earth, 4 million years in stasis, it's going to be a crash on Earth and the Beast Wars kind of thing happens instead. And who knows how they're going to write that story, but it should be fairly interesting to see how they decide to tackle it that way. I mean, we've already kind of had little tidbits of what Kingdom is going to be about, but we're going to learn that more as time progresses. But this is, again, it's interesting to see where we're going to be going. We still don't have a release date yet. We know it's going to be 6 episodes. It's going to be the second chapter. It's going to be called EarthRise. We just don't have a date yet. I'm going to assume that they've probably already written a majority of it. They've probably already started maybe working on it. But it's fascinating stuff nonetheless, because love or hate what we got from Siege, it's the beginning of what is going to be our Transformer fiction moving forward. So hopefully that there's a growth, there's evolution, and that the second season, I use air quotes here, second season, chapter 2, will be a step up from what we got before, regardless if you liked it or hated it or not. Hopefully it'll be a lot better than what we got before. And it should prove to be interesting. Let me know what you think. What would you like to see going into EarthRise here? If this is a space adventure, a Lost Light, if you will, IDW, what would you like to see? Are we going to visit planets like Velicitron? Are we going to visit planets like, I don't know, Planet Master would be kind of cool to see, the lost Autobot tribes of that kind of stuff. That'd be pretty cool if they could kind of, work that in. But again, it's probably going to work more within the confines of what's available from the toys and play around those angles, obviously, as opposed to, let's say, why wasn't the Energon dealer in Siege, not Sound Blaster, but Swindle? Because there was no Swindle toy. That's kind of how it is. They're kind of they have this toy box, and they were working within that toy box. So it's going to be the same thing with EarthRise. You kind of have to look at the EarthRise toys and go, what's going to be the toy box that they play within with this line? So it's going to be the same thing. But yeah, let me know what you think. What would you like to see? And what would you like to see possibly moving forward afterwards, even with Kingdom, like how they see the story kind of wrapping into that. Again, a reminder, tonight we're going to have a YouTube live stream. I haven't decided yet what we're going to do. Maybe we'll have a guest. Maybe it'll just be me alone. I haven't decided yet. I'll figure that out as the day progresses, and I'll talk to a few people. But yeah, pretty interesting stuff here. And hopefully this is not going to be the last we're going to be talking about the Netflix series as stuff develops the rest of the week.